Exxon was the biggest company on Earth. It was at the top of the S&P 500 for its entire history since the 1950s, and even earlier as Standard Oil. A company so big it impacted almost every person on Earth. But something changed. Now, Exxon is not even in the top 10. Exxon's been falling. Revenue dropped by $300 billion between 2011 and 2020. How did the biggest company on Earth fall off? Or did something else happen? To find out, we need to go back to the early 20th century, where something happened that changed the world. A trust called Standard Oil had a chokehold on the world's oil, 95% of all oil produced in the US. One company controlling all of such an important resource and using it abusively to get their way. Predatory pricing, secret deals with the railroads, even buying new competitors just to shut them down. It was a disaster. So in 1911, the Supreme Court broke up Standard Oil into multiple companies, and one of them quickly emerged as the dominant player, Exxon, or eventually ExxonMobil. They had power, huge size, and heaps of capital. Even with more companies, there were huge barriers to entry for any potential competitor, but Exxon continued to grow for close to a century. And investors loved this company. Exxon was famous for capital discipline and conservative financial management. They were the slow and steady giant that always delivered, great for investments and market cap, but it goes even deeper. Something else made Exxon the most desirable company for shareholders. It was a reputation built on absolute consistency of dividends. Exxon has never missed a dividend payment, ever. Exxon has paid out dividends to its investors even during world wars, massive oil crashes, and global recessions. In crises, they would even take on more debt just to make the payments, because the risk of missing just one could cause their entire reputation to crumble. They were perhaps the safest, most consistent, and most reliable bet for investors on the entire stock exchange. Exxon was the blueprint for what a giant company should look like. Safe, slow, but dependable demand and cash flow, and with their absurd revenue, that put them in the top 10 of the S&P 500 since it was created, and it only got better.
Investors, ExxonMobil is the current leader with a market cap of $375.9 billion, and with increasing talk of $100 oil, Exxon could tighten that grip on that top spot.
In 2009, after the financial crisis where oil returns were strong, Exxon climbed to the most valuable company on Earth by market cap. But all of this was about to change. As soon as they reached the top, another company appeared to take the throne. In the 2000s, 100 years after their creation, another type of company began rising, and quickly. If there's one lesson from Exxon getting left behind, it's that ignoring how the world moves online comes with huge consequences. If you want to be taken seriously in the professional world today, having a website is absolutely critical. Not just a profile or a code repo, but an actual site you control end to end. That's why today's sponsor is Hostinger, and specifically their AI website builder, built to turn one day into day one. Hostinger is the most affordable way to get online and also one of the fastest. You can go from nothing to a real website in just a few clicks, without hiring a developer or spending weeks setting things up. Everything you need lives in one place: the website builder, hosting, a domain, a professional email, and even an email marketing tool. If you go to pricing, the business plan is the one to pick. This is where all the AI and monetization features unlock. Hostinger makes it easy to sell physical products, digital products, or appointments with 0% transaction fees. There's also built-in blog support if you want to monetize content with ads or affiliate links. And with Hostinger's AI website builder, you can generate a full website in seconds. You enter your brand name, describe what you're building, and the AI creates the layout, copy, and images for you. From there, you can customize everything using a simple drag and drop editor. You also get built-in AI tools like an AI writer, image generator, and AI SEO tools to help optimize your site before it goes live. At checkout, I recommend the 48-month plan since it's the cheapest option, includes a free domain, extra months free, and locks in the lowest monthly price. You can enter my code, logically answered, for an extra 10% off on top of the New Year discount. Thank you to Hostinger for supporting our videos. It wasn't an oil giant or a pharmaceutical company or a major bank or a food and drink company. For the first time in Exxon's history, another company was seriously challenging its position as the largest company in the world. And in 2011, they surpassed Exxon. That company was Apple. In August 2011, Apple briefly passed Exxon as the most valuable public company in the US. Oil prices were volatile while the iPhone was booming. But why does this moment matter to Exxon? It might seem like this was just Apple, but in reality, the S&P 500 and the entire world was going through a metamorphosis. It wasn't just smartphones. Another type of company began to directly threaten Exxon. But for now, Exxon had bigger problems. The death of oil itself, or at least the fears. In the 2010s, there was one question on everyone's minds. Investors, governments, companies old and new. Will EVs replace ICE cars? Electric vehicles showed that oil wasn't just subject to price swings anymore. It could actually start losing demand. For the first time in history, Exxon faced a disruption that targeted whether people would need oil at all, not just how much they'd paid for it. And this wasn't theoretical. EVs exploded in the 2010s, pushed by aggressive government support and mounting climate pressure. Countries announced plans to ban gas cars entirely. Cities pledged to go carbon neutral. Subsidies and grants were promised for those buying electric vehicles. The momentum felt unstoppable, and at the center of all of it was Tesla. They became the symbol for the future. Sleek, electric, innovative. Everything Exxon wasn't. Tesla represented the existential threat to oil itself, and Exxon wasn't thrilled about this. The electric car as a concept had actually been around for decades, and at every chance, Exxon and its peers were trying to smear it. As far back as 1967, the American Petroleum Institute, an oil lobby, pushed back against government-funded research into electric cars, telling Congress, "We take exception to the basic assumption that clean air can be achieved only by finding an alternative to the internal combustion engine." In fact, ExxonMobil funded a disinformation campaign aimed at discrediting scientists and blocking government efforts to fight climate change for more than 50 years. Though it eventually came out that the company's own scientists knew as early as the 1970s that greenhouse gases caused climate change. In the 2010s, Exxon lobbied UK and EU officials against EV transport policies and tried to fight EV tax credits along with charging infrastructure. The fact that EVs took as long as they did is likely in part thanks to Exxon. But now they were here, and it was falling apart. Exxon stock was tumbling badly throughout the 2010s, and inversely, Tesla's was growing. Then it happened. In 2020, Tesla's market cap surpassed Exxon's for the first time. This was even after an Exxon rebound, but it gets worse. Exxon also fell out of the top 10 on the S&P 500 for the first time in history. This was massive. It was the first time in the entire 90-year history of the S&P 500 that Exxon was not among the top 10 largest companies. 90 years. Through every crisis, every war, every recession, every oil price fluctuation, Exxon had always been there. And now, for the first time, they weren't. In that same year, 2020, Exxon's market cap had fallen to just $144 billion, a staggering drop from its peak of over $500 billion. Was this the end of Exxon? The age of oil was over. At least, that's how it seemed. Yet, this story has another twist. Things didn't continue as people expected, especially for Exxon. Over the past 8 years, we've posted 1,100 videos, yet we still haven't crossed 1 million subscribers. We are close though, and I believe 2026 is the year, and if you subscribe right now, we can actually make that a reality. Exxon was still holding on, and we know this because of their age-old practice. They still had not missed a single dividend payment. Even as their market cap tumbled down, they maintained their reputation for consistency. In fact, Exxon doubled down on capital discipline. They maintained their dividends and focused on high-margin projects rather than embracing the growth-at-all-cost mentality of Silicon Valley. This was to show investors Exxon was still in a strong position, and the dividends only pushed this further. Yet, simultaneously, something else was happening. Remember when Apple overtook Exxon? Well, this point marked a change for the stock market. In 2024, old companies like Exxon, GE, Johnson & Johnson, and even Berkshire Hathaway disappear, and in its place, Nvidia, Meta, Google, Tesla, plus the tech giants who were already there. This is even more the case in 2026, with Nvidia now ahead of Apple. The world changed. Why did the market suddenly stop rewarding stability? Well, from 2009, after the financial crash, interest rates were virtually zero. So your safe bets, like bonds, savings, or loose cash, are not making much. When rates are low, stability is less exciting, and big bets like tech are extremely attractive. And with low rates, borrowing is cheaper, venture capital is easier. Suddenly, investors could chase riskier bets because they had absurd returns. It used to be that big tech was volatile and oil was safe, and that is still true. But now, the perception is that big tech is also safe and uncapped, while oil is cyclical and capped. The capacity for Apple, Microsoft, Meta, and Nvidia to grow seems unlimited. New ecosystems, product lines, services, cloud infrastructure, all kinds of potential for revenue streams. But it goes deeper. Oil was the scarce resource of the 20th century, but today it is compute and energy for AI. Giant data centers using the power of millions of homes, GPUs which can provide machine learning, RAM, power, everything for AI. If Exxon found a way to use oil for AI, it would probably be in the top 10 again. Tech showed that companies could scale globally overnight with minimal physical assets. $1 trillion valuation, why not $5 trillion? The ceiling has disappeared, and it began to snowball, but something else also happened. The EV dream did not come true. Many EV companies are struggling to turn a profit. The demand is not as massive as expected, and the cost and problems in producing batteries are immense. Ford and GM have scaled back their electric ambitions, and EV startups are going bankrupt. Governments are also pulling back on aggressive EV mandates. The transition to EVs is proving to be far slower and more complex than the headline suggested just a few years ago. To be clear, EV growth is real, just much slower, and oil proved far more resilient than anyone predicted. Global oil demand did not collapse. In fact, it hit record highs after the pandemic. Exxon's market cap began to rebound. Then, the Ukraine war hit, creating energy shocks that pushed prices higher for longer. Meanwhile, the world reopened after COVID. The reality became clear. Oil was not dead yet, not even close. Exxon's consistency was still paying off.
This is the highest earnings per share we've ever delivered and reflects a lot of the hard work we've been doing since 2019. We continue to reduce cost. This year, I expect we'll have another $2.5 billion of cost reductions.
Over the past 5 years, Exxon's market cap is up roughly 290% to an all-time high well over $500 billion. To put that into perspective, this outperforms the S&P 500 over the same period, and it even beats many large-cap tech peers post-2021. But it's still not enough, because the game has changed, and the very top is just too big. What's 500 billion compared to 5 trillion? Exxon controlled the world's most important commodity for over a century. They were the most stable, most reliable profit maker on the planet. But that's not what investors wanted anymore. The market began to favor bigger bets, more lucrative bets. Exxon is still at a very respectable rank 16 on the S&P 500 today. But at the very top of the market, all of the weight belongs to the AI and tech giants, or old companies that have embraced tech. Exxon didn't die. The game just changed. The only question now is, how long before the tech giants face their own Exxon moment? Maybe if the AI bubble pops and tech stocks come crashing down, Exxon will make it to the top again, but only time will tell. All of this makes you wonder, was Toyota right all along for taking things slow with EVs? Check out this video to learn more, but until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.